What's up guys, Cameron here from Drums and Drams, and in today's video, I'm gonna be reviewing the 16th release in Heaven Hill's Parker's Heritage Collection. This is the double-barreled blend, released at the end of 2022. It's coming in at 132.2 proof or 66.1% ABV, so a super solid proof point, nice high proof bourbon. I cannot wait to taste it right now for all of you. Speaking of which, this is actually the very first time that I'm gonna be tasting this bourbon. The sample just arrived in the mail today, along with some other cool goodies, other samples in the box, and that is all courtesy of generous patron, supporter of the channel, WhiskeyTube community member Joe W. Joe, thank you so much for sending this sample my way, and some of those other samples I'm sure are going to make an appearance on a live stream or a video down the road. But the task at hand right now is this Parker's Heritage Collection release, which is not something that I get to taste very often. Something that I'm not finding bottles of ever. Never owned a Parker's Heritage bottle. That's because number one, it's not a cheap bottle at $175 suggested retail price, although secondary on this bottle right now, or street price if you want to call it that, is around $600 to $650 if you find it there. Otherwise, it might be north of $1,000 from certain online retailers. At the end of the day, it's not cheap, and not only is it not cheap, but it's also really hard to find. So unless you know a store owner, have a fantastic relationship you've built up probably over quite a while and after quite a few purchases, or maybe you win it in a raffle, the right to buy one of these things, you're probably not gonna find it. And so to that point, I'm gonna offer maybe a suggestion in this video of something else you could try instead. We'll see if maybe this Elijah Craig is the right choice or not. But again, first time tasting this particular double-barreled blend. I've told you the proof point. Let me tell you the age or ages. This is 13 and 15 years old. So it's a blend of 13 and 15 year bourbon. 2/3 of the blend, 13 years old, then rebarreled for an additional month in a brand new barrel, level 3 char. That's 2/3 of the blend. The other 1/3 of the blend is after they dump that 13 year, they then throw in some 15 year. So 1/3 of it is that 15 year bourbon that is not double barreled. And so now it's time to get into this. I don't think there's anything else left to say about it. And if there is, if I missed anything, please let me know in the comment section. Hit the like button, subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Let's check this thing out on the nose now and see what we get. All right, so no denying the fact that this is 132.2 proof. It shows it on the nose. Big delivery out of the glass. It's just jumping out of the glass with flavor. This thing smells really, really nice right away. Super sweet and super spicy. Kind of almost a velvety sensation coming out of the glass. Like, I feel like when I taste this bourbon, it's gonna be big, rich, velvety, viscous. This kind of impression is coming off the nose. I would say the biggest flavors I'm getting right now, a big dose of, I mean, this sounds ridiculous. This sounds like such a typical thing to say. Caramel. I mean, this is a caramel monster of a whiskey. Lots and lots of baking spices. Your cinnamons, your nutmegs, your pie crust in particular. I'm gonna call this more of like a pie crust feel. It's got that dessert quality, that sweet and spicy kind of combination, maybe even a little gingerbread to that point of sweet and spicy kind of working together here. And then on the fruit side of things, it's not a particularly fruity bourbon, but the one thing it has in droves is a big dark cherry note. I'm not getting anything brighter than that. No sort of citrus, lemon, lime, orange coming from the rye component. That's long gone. I think the barrel, particularly maybe that second maturation of the 13 year component in the blend, that's probably kind of getting rid of any impact the rye spice has in any sort of citrusy way. I think where the complexity of this whiskey comes in, especially on the nose right now, is really from just big, oaky, caramelized brown sugar, those kinds of notes, as opposed to anything from the fruit side of things. Certainly tons and tons of spicy oak, a little bit of a sweet oak feel to this, but it's not sweet in the way that you might expect a Heaven Hill 17 or dusty whiskeys. It's not quite there on the sweet oak side of things. So I'm gonna do one more sniff here, and then we'll get to the palate. Okay, last thing I'm gonna say about this whiskey is that I think it still retains a good amount of freshness, even considering how oaky, how caramel forward, and just dessert-like it is, it still retains a little bit of freshness on the nose, which I appreciate because I think a lot of times when we start rebarreling, toasted barrel, additional maturation in other finishing barrels, this kind of thing, sometimes the whiskey can get a little tired, it can get a little bogged down, especially when you're rebarreling it. And in this case, I think the blend of that extra 15-year in the mix, only putting that 13-year in the barrel, the second one, for an additional month. Not 3, not 6, not 9 months, 1 extra month. I think all of these things are kind of showing through on the nose because it's coming off intense, super sweet, super spicy, tons of oak, dense, rich, layered, but also with that little bit of freshness that is keeping this interesting on the nose. Final thing I'll say, just a little complaint. I think I've been saying this a lot on a lot of whiskey, so please disregard. Maybe I'm just going through a phase, a low proof phase, but I feel like it comes off this much hot on the nose. I've even put it in this glass. I keep using these glasses for high proof whiskeys to kind of roll off some of the alcohol vapors and the aromas. It's still just a little bit hot, but now it's time to stop talking and start sipping. Cheers. Let me know if you guys have tried this in the comments below and what you think. I can't wait to get this on the palate. Here we go. Wow, that is a full-bodied bourbon on the palate. Mouth coating, mouth watering. Strangely enough, I actually got a little bit of like a green apple, like candied green apple, maybe even Jolly Rancher type note. But wow, I mean, first impression of this on the palate. I don't want to talk too much about specific notes, just kind of the overall experience of drinking this bourbon. The arrival is humongous. I mean, big baking spices, pie crust, like I mentioned on the nose. That drives this bourbon from the front of the palate all the way now into the finish. It's relentless, it does not let up, but not in a way that feels overly hot. And so the fact that on the nose I was worried about that, those fears were kind of quelled. I think that's the word, whatever the word might be. I don't have that big of a worry about that now after tasting it. It's so rich. I can't believe how many layers this has to it. I would expect a whiskey like this to have a little more sweet oak to it on the palate. So that might be one very small subjective complaint. I guess I maybe expected something a little bit different, and maybe I shouldn't have expected that. So something nutty on the palate now, and you would expect that from Heaven Hill, of course, but it's not actually the typical peanut. It's not coming off like peanut. I'm more inclined to say either maybe hazelnut, like a hazelnut, like Nutella. I think that's hazelnut, some sort of like chocolate hazelnut combination, or maybe even like an almond paste. There's something nutty in here. You could even convince me cashew. Here I am just freaking dissecting nuts. That's probably not what I wanted to say. A little bit more of that on the, on the second sip. I mean, what do you say about this? Huge brown sugar, molasses, maple, the densest, richest caramel on planet Earth, all driven by an incredible amount of pie crust and baking spices that keeps it interesting, keeps it alive and fresh. Pepper tingling on the back of the palate now as I'm well into the finish. A teeny little bit drying. You would expect that maybe with the age, with the additional maturation from that 13-year component in the blend. But I'm a big fan of this whiskey. I think this is a really nice bourbon from Heaven Hill. Definitely is edging towards the butterscotch notes of these older Heaven Hill releases and, kind of dusty bourbons. It's edging towards that little bit of a dusty note, but it's not quite there. I think it does have some relationship to this, but if you're going into this thinking maybe you're gonna get this kind of a profile, or even a Heaven Hill 17 profile, it's not really gonna give you either of those. It's something in between. And to that point, I kind of wanted to see, I mean, I haven't even done this comparison yet. I just wanna see if the Elijah Craig Barrel Proof A123 can be a substitute for this Parker's Heritage in the event that you don't find it, which honestly for 95% of us in the world, we're probably not gonna find this. So maybe having an option like this Elijah Craig will be nice, but I don't know if I can suggest it yet. So it's time to take a quick little sip of this Elijah Craig A123 and see if it has any comparison. Maybe this is gonna be a bust. And if it is, I'm gonna still leave it in the video. So here we go. I actually think this is a fair backup plan to the Parker's Heritage. I really like the Elijah Craig A123. In a comparison like this, which is really the importance of doing side-by-sides, it shows some additional flaws in the A123. It comes off a little hotter, maybe a little bit younger, which it is younger, but it doesn't taste like a 12-year-old when you're comparing it to this blend of 13 and 15. But The experience is very similar. Shorter finish, less spice, but it is a lower proof by, I don't know, 6, 7 proof points, something like that. I do think at $70, maybe $80, depending on where you're at, this is a great substitute. I know it's not widely available, but pretty darn available. If you can find it and you can't find the Parker's Heritage, don't feel like you need to spend $600 to $1,000 on this release. It's a great whiskey. I don't see it being worth that much, to be honest with you. Like, if I overpaid for it, I might go up to $250. That's just really knowing the rarity of the bottle. But otherwise, grab this ECBP A123 if you have the opportunity and you need a backup plan for this Parker's Heritage. I'm gonna have my final sip of this and then we're gonna wrap this video up. Third sip is the charm for this one. Spicy, sweet, balanced, beautiful drinking experience, rich, layered, dense, complex, all of the great things. A little bit too hot, I don't know. It must just be a phase for me. Hit that like button, subscribe, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think of this release, this video, the channel. Cheers, and I will see you guys next time.